Hi there. It is time for a little Kingdoms Forlorn update video, I think. Also, I apologize for not putting out, or at least starting my next series of Let's Play videos for it. I've honestly just been very, very lost in Elden Ring right now. I've been loving that game so far. If you're playing it, let me know, because I'm like 33 hours into it, and the game only came out last Thursday. At the time of this recording, it is Tuesday. So I've put quite a bit of time into it. I actually just wanted to make this video to have a little bit of a sort of to help do my part in sort of potentially getting some more people in on this game. I honestly just really love Kingdoms Forlorn, and I want to help support it as much as possible. So the first things first, I may have forgotten some things on this list that I'm about to read. I do want to sort of just make this as a video, a quick and easy way for people who maybe were on the fence earlier in the campaign, or maybe who dropped their pledge earlier, or aren't sure if they want to update, or just potentially new people that are sort of confused as to what exactly encompasses the core game and what exactly they're getting for their money. Because at the end of the day, it is a fairly pricey game. However, you are going to be able to see, maybe from this video, that there is a shit ton of content, and is also one of the reasons why I potentially might miss some things, or might have missed some things. I sort of wanted to group things together. I'm also not going to be doing a deep dive on the mechanics. This is going to be more of a quicker video, just to potentially, maybe show your friends who are on the fence, or show new people who might be interested in the game, like, hey, these are some really, really cool things you're getting with the core game. And then also, I'll be talking a little bit about the expansions, because I do want to focus on the core game, because A, that is my main pledge. I did recently just upgrade to the Barony expansion, but to be honest, with their all-in announcement, I just don't have the money to go all-in right now. I will be hopefully maybe saving up some money to all-in later at a, unfortunately at a higher price, but at the end of the day, I mean, that's, if I all in now, it's over $600 Canadian for me, which I just can't afford right now. But anyways, for the core game, here are the new things that essentially we have gotten from the Kickstarter. Now, these are things that were either part of stretch goals, they're things that we reached through social media goals for them, or they were just, extra things that were potentially announced. So we'll go over some of the new mechanics that we have gotten so far. And so, like I said, I won't be talking about also the things that were in the core game previously, at the start of the campaign, because I expect that you might know that already. So I'll be just mainly talking about the new things. So we got followers, which is essentially a new mechanic that provides benefits to your party. There are also going to be allies in the game, which come in the form of princesses, for example, which we'll talk about later. But unlike allies, these won't be placed on the battle boards, but they're just extra benefits that can, they can help you out. We also have the Wandering Monsters new mechanic, and that enables certain monsters to actually appear in different kingdoms, which essentially just increases the amount of combinations and variety of content. So, for example, in the core game, there's 2 expansions right now. So you have the Sunken Kingdom and you have the Principality of Stone. So, a monster from the Sunken Kingdom could potentially wander in the Principality of Stone and vice versa, which is very, very cool. We also have the Outposts, which is a new mechanic that involves places to visit between delves that sort of build on rules, the initial rules for trading, crafting, buying. They're essentially small hub areas that you can sort of rest at between delves. You can recruit followers there, or it can maybe even potentially play some mini games. They've also added in alongside that scouting, which is another mechanic related to Outposts, which lets you sort of manipulate the kingdom and exploration decks before you actually delve. So you can sort of fix the top of the deck to sort of go where you want to go a little bit. Additionally, later on in the campaign, they also unlocked contracts for the Outposts, which are small, sort of very varied quests you can obtain from the Outposts that just essentially will give you potentially more loot, more information, so on and so forth. Nothing too major there, but just small variable quests like kill this type of monster or go to this place and do this thing. We also have another new mechanic, which is Hunters and Ambushes. So these are 2 new mechanics that add more variety and surprises during both the delve and clash phase, such as potentially changing how the fight works mid-fight, or having certain monsters stalk you in the delve. There's going to be also a new clash board coming in the form of what is called the Panzer Bridge. So this will be a battle board that's specifically used for special clashes, and also introduces a new type of clash called the Dragon Bridge Run, where you're essentially fighting a normal mob or potentially boss enemy, but also there's going to be a dragon in that fight as well. But ideally, your goal is to run away. But of course, you can try fighting both of them and maybe die trying. But ideally, you're probably going to be running away, where the dragon will move around. You have to essentially stay ahead of the dragon. Another new mechanic they've also added, which is the weather mechanic. So that'll bring new weather cards in, which will pretty straightforward. They'll just essentially provide different persistent modifiers that'll affect how you delve. And the last new mechanic they've included is the campfire tales. This is sort of a smaller one, but they've essentially, through the stretch goals or social stretch goals, they've unlocked 4 campfire tales for the core game, which sort of are small narrative stories that you share with your group either mid-delve or potentially after a boss clash, and that can just have your own potential rewards or, hopefully not losses. As for updates and changes they've made to the core game, they've increased the card sizes for ability cards, so no longer are they the small, I can't remember what the type of card size is, but they're no longer the small cards. They've upgraded all of the knight ability cards to the standard card size. Additionally, each one will have its own unique illustrations, and also now all exploration cards will have their own unique illustrations, which is very, very cool. I love the art. I love the art in the game. I'm one of the people who actually does like the card art, so this is a huge bump for me. Another update change they made just recently is the mob bases. So for mob enemies, where in the tabletop simulator demo or in the promo material that you saw with the prototypes, you would have seen sort of just the standees for the mobs just being numbered. Now what they're going to be actually doing is they're going to have bases that are numbered instead. So what this means is it'll hopefully make it easier to read things, but also B, it'll just provide them more the ability to be more varied in like poses and miniature and standee design. So yeah, that's a very, very cool update. Another big update is they've added 5-player mode now, which is really, really cool. So now you can also play with an extra person, and considering my play group has gotten a little bit bigger, that's huge for me. This will also incorporate their true solo mode, which wasn't necessarily a new update. And just by the way, I will be... the reason these are brief is because I sort of expect, if you want to learn more, go to the Kickstarter. Their blog post updates are very, very clearly titled, and so it's pretty easy to learn more about what I'm talking about. But the 5-player mode does support in the true solo mode, essentially meaning that you could do, for example, like 3 knights and 2 squires, or 4 knights and 1 squire, which is very, very nice. Now, for major things that they've essentially added to the core game, the first thing I did mention a little bit earlier, this is the Sunken Kingdom of Utrerbont. This is a whole new kingdom to explore. So the Principality of Stone is the one that we've sort of had a little bit of glimpse into with the prototype material and the tabletop simulator demo. Now this is a whole separate kingdom to explore, which brings its own story content, mechanics, gear, monster variants, loot, all that good stuff. Kingdom cards, exploration cards, story events. The nice thing is they will be also incorporating the knight story with this one as well, meaning that you can progress your story regardless of if you're either doing the Principality of Stone or the Sunken Kingdom. And I think this kingdom also boasts like another like 40 to 50 hours of gameplay, I think, because I think that's sort of the norm for the new kingdoms and the expansions and stuff like that. Additionally, they've added 2 new knights for the core campaign. Or I guess I should say 2 new knights. One mainly for the core campaign, one is an add-on. However, I am including it into this the core aspect of it, because if you are a core pledge backer or higher, you will get the Sir Cockatrice, which is the add-on knight. You'll get him for free. So the main core new knight that was added was Paracelsa, or Paracelsa. I'm not sure how to pronounce her name yet. I believe it's Paracelsa. But she's the main new knight. So with the core game, you're going to be getting 5 knights, the 4 base knights that we already knew about. And then Paracelsa is the 5th one. And then if you are backing during the Kickstarter campaign at a core pledge or higher, you will also get the Sir Cockatrice as an add-on, a free add-on. So essentially a 6th knight if you're doing a core pledge or higher. We've also gotten new enemies for both the mob types, or I guess, and then also the new large monsters. I don't know exactly. I see large monsters, which sort of just encompasses like the devils, the dragons, and the kings, and the vassals. So things like the Egg Knight, for example, I would consider like a large monster, even though, there are potential rules for like the exhibition or mob phase. So we got 3 of each essentially in the core game added. So All of these are bringing their own rules. Some of them have rules for both the exhibition and the boss clash phase, but also some of them even bring their own special clash rules. And then they all, of course, are bringing their own mob, BP, AI cards, you know, mechanics, gear, little story tidbits. So we have the Knights of the Fen, which is a new vassal enemy, King Laid Low, which is a new king enemy, and the Devil of the Ancient Dusk, which is a new devil enemy. And then for the mob style enemies, we have the First Men of the Ruins, Haunts of Uchabont, and the Pumpkin Monstrosity. And the Pumpkin Monstrosity actually comes from the Barony, but they are added into the Barony of Bountiful Harvest expansion, but they are added into the core game. So and I say this because some of these enemies and stuff are like lore-wise, they're like from different kingdoms and from different expansions. However, you will be getting them in the actual core game. So we also have 4 new squires for solo mode. So they initially had 4 squires just as the core game, but now they've extended that to, you know, they've doubled that to 4 new squires. We have Fabio, Minerva, Bartos, and Ife. And then we also have 3 saints right now. I believe a 4th one's incoming. Saint Cain is supposed to be determined, I believe. But we, of course, have the Saint Urbane, which you probably have seen from the prototype, as well as the Tabletop Simulator demo. And then they've also announced, or unlocked, I guess is a better way to put it, Saint Hieronymus and Saint Lind. And Saint Urbane is a little bit special because he also did bring a special mob enemy to the Principality of Stone, which is also in the core game, called the Rat Wolves. So those are the 3 saints that we have so far. And again, these are all things that we just have right now. I'm guessing there's definitely gonna be more added to the core game by the time this campaign ends, because at the time of this recording, it is currently March 1st. We have a week, a little less than a week, I think, actually, until the campaign ends. So this is just gonna get better, bigger and better. And I'm still just talking about like all the new stuff. This is all just the new stuff we've gotten so far since the campaign started, on top of the already big core game, at least in my opinion. We also have 3 princesses. So these are the allies I talked about earlier. So we have Princess Cassia, Fiona, and Chantel. So these are, unlike followers, these are actual miniatures and stuff that we will be getting to place on the battle board. And they will also still be helping us in the delve and clash phase, both alike. So you will have to try and keep them alive during the clash phase they have hinted at. Another big major thing they've added on is the 2 dungeons. So dungeons are dungeons and sub-kingdoms. I don't know if we're getting sub-kingdoms in the core campaign or the core box, but we are getting 2 dungeons for the core. We are getting one for the Principality of Stone, or sorry, we're getting both for the Principality of Stone, I believe. So they're essentially a new way to delve that will be more focused on attaining loot and rewards as opposed to progressing or to doing story and exploring. So this will all be about loot and glory, they say. So these aren't pre-generated, rather they will be sort of constructed and placed in the appropriate kingdom books, and they'll feature an increased difficulty level and pre-constructed enemies. However, of course, they'll be hidden until revealed. So there'll be some minor random elements like where loot is and enemies and stuff like that. However, they will be constructed ahead of time, I believe, is sort of how that reads. It was a little bit confusing to read for me, but they're essentially a new way to delve, and they'll be, of course, be a little bit tighter quarters and less free-form movement. And so the core game will now have the tunnels of Alderbarret and the Vice Kaiser Foundry for the Principality of Stone Kingdom. So that is all new stuff or new updates and changes they have made to the core game. So I 100% recommend, if you were on the fence about this, maybe due to content, or you just wasn't sure if it was worth it at that price point, I definitely say now it is 110% worth that price point for the core pledge. They've more than doubled their content, and not only that, have made some very, very cool quality of life changes as well. So I think it's a really, really great place to jump in. I know Kickstarters usually get their last wind. I've heard, in the last 48 hours, but hopefully this sort of helped you get a better idea of sort of what things have been added and changed since you might have maybe lowered your pledge or canceled your pledge earlier in the campaign. All right, so that is just the core game stuff. They've also added on new things in terms of expansions, as well as just add-ons in general. So we've gotten 2 major expansions so far. So the first one was announced, the Barony of Bountiful Harvest, which is sort of like this really, really cool creepy plant themed area. And then we have the Kingdoms of Eshin, which is very, very more blood and dark fantasy themed. So, which was like recently just announced, like, I believe a couple of days ago. And that also unlocked a new dragon enemy for the Barony of Bountiful Harvest, called the Mushroom Dragon of Godcap. And both of these expansions, of course, boast, over 40 hours of gameplay, the usual, new kingdom cards, exploration cards, story events, enemies, so on and so forth. So these are just like games in and of itself, which is very, very cool. 2 other add-ons they've also included in the campaign, which are the Sir Gallant and the Knight with No Name knights. So these, of course, just like every other knight that has been included, they each come with their own 25 to 30 hour story, new gear, progression, unique progression, so on and so forth. They've also made additions to the very first expansion they announced, which is the 10,000 Succulent Fears expansion. And this is more of I wouldn't say like sub-expansion, because that implies it's like quite small, but it is expanded. It expands onto the Principality of Stone Kingdom. So it includes new sub-kingdoms, which are similar to dungeons, which I mentioned earlier. So the 10,000 Succulent Fears expansion gets the Schwarzreich and the Ancestor Ruins sub-kingdoms. They also added on the Bog Witch, which is a new vassal monster, which actually comes from the Sunken Kingdom. They've added in a new dungeon, which is the Bog Maze, as well as another new clash board layout called the Belly of the Beast. And this is specifically going to be used in some special clashes that happen inside of a dragon, which also unlocks a new type of clash called the Devoured Clash, which, pretty straightforward. What that means, you're going to be eaten up by a dragon, and you're going to have to do some fun things to get your way out. Potentially maybe even killing the dragon in the process, I would assume. But that is it. That is all the new stuff, at least what I've hoped. Again, like I said, I probably missed some stuff. But think of it this way. If I missed anything, that's just extra bonuses on top of what I already talked about. Everything I talked about is all new things or changes they've made to the campaign since the core game came out. I backed the core game right away when I thought the game as a whole was worth the price point already, and they've more than doubled the content. So definitely, if you had friends who were on the fence, if you had people who were on the fence, or if you wanted to try and get more people in on this game, I will be, of course, adding in pictures and stuff alongside to sort of help emphasize how cool a lot of the stuff they are adding in. But yeah, definitely go back this game. I think it's going to be the next Kingdom Death Monster in terms of like sort of a cult following, because I do have a lot of faith in Into the Unknown Studios. I like their communication. I know that their marketing isn't great, but I do like a lot of the ideas and goals and stuff like that they propose. They definitely have a clear vision, which I always like. They definitely want to try to do something their own, and that's one thing that I very much appreciated about Aeon Trespass Odyssey as well. And who knows, maybe things will change when I get Aeon Trespass Odyssey. But I mean, this game is essentially, mechanics-wise, going to be, I think, a very, very big step up to Aeon Trespass Odyssey, since this is obviously their second game. But anyways, now let's get into maybe why you shouldn't back Kingdoms Forlorn. So, first off, I mean, Kingdoms Forlorn is a big game. This is shaping up, especially with all the stuff that I've mentioned, that it can potentially be a lifestyle game. If you're unfamiliar with that term, it's sort of similar to like Warhammer or, Kingdom Death Monster, where you really could play this game for hundreds and hundreds of hours and maybe not experience everything. And I know that, especially since this game is meant to be played cooperative, you might not have friends or you might not have a play group who are really down for something like that. Now, obviously, there is a true solo mode for this game, but I think especially with how the narrative story works and, all the knights' stories are integrated, I think the full experience, I guess I should say, would be best with people, other players. So this is a really, really big game. And, it's a big, big commitment. So if you are someone who, can only get together maybe, a couple of times a month or a few times a month, this is a type of game that I think might be a little bit harder to table. And speaking of that, this game is not easy to play, or I guess I should say not easy to learn. Once you get the hang of the rhythm and stuff like that, and you get the foundation of the rules down, it's pretty easy. Now, that being said, I'm a little bit biased. I've, being a Kingdom Death Monster player, I'm fairly experienced with these types of rules, these, more complex interactions. And obviously this game sort of adopts some of that style of gameplay from Kingdom Death Monster. However, I think you just have a lot of upfront time to learn the game, which is going to vary from person to person, but I think everyone can learn these types of games. And I think this might be the one to do. However, it's tough to say, of course, since we obviously don't have it in our hands. But there's a lot to the game. I had to spend probably about 6 to 8 hours with the rulebook just for the Tabletop Simulator demo, and even then, you can see from my gameplay videos, even then I still made a fair number of mistakes. Now that being said, obviously it was an incomplete rulebook. There's going to be balancing and stuff and changes to make for the rulebook in terms of like editing, but still, definitely expect, I would say, like a good full weekend maybe just to learn the game. And again, that's another barrier to entry. Not everyone is down to try and bash their head against the wall in a rule book. I'm the rules guy in my group. I'm used to reading the rule book on my own and learning the game ahead of time for my friends. But not everyone's willing to teach their friends these types of games because it is tough to teach. It's one thing to learn the game yourself and learn how to play it yourself, but it's another thing to actually teach someone. I had my first play session with some friends on the Tabletop Simulator demo, and it took us probably about 4 to 5 hours just to get the first delve, just get through the first delve and the mob clash fight. And even then, even by the end of that, although my friends still didn't really have an idea what was going on. They had a basic bare minimum understanding of sort of the nature of the game, but if I asked them to do a turn or something like that, I'm pretty sure they would not be able to do it at this point. So it's something just like, tabletop role-playing games or long-form games. You got to learn as you go. So it's a big commitment in that sense as well. And another reason why you might not, why you shouldn't back this game is because Kickstarter is not a pre-order store. This is not a finalized product. You are going on more just the vision of the designer and the developer, and what they might not deliver. Now that being said, I've loved the communication from Into the Unknown Studios. Even just me as a small-time content creator, Marcin, who was like leading the team or whatever, he was super responsive in emails. And as you can see from their Kickstarter comments section, they pretty much try to respond to every single thing they can and clarify things as well. And they've even admitted to not being very good marketers. So yeah, that's another big reason why you shouldn't back this game, because at the end of the day, it is a lot of money. Even the core pledge, even though you are getting a ton of value, you're still spending quite a bit of money, especially if you're like me and you're Canadian, because boy, oh boy, our dollar is not great. So yeah, those I would say are the main reasons why you shouldn't back Kingdoms Forlorn. I could go, of course, even further into a lot of those points, like especially like the complexity of the game. Like, it is a fiddly game. There's a tons of interactions, small interactions you have to remember. There's a lot of weirdness with the game, but that also is sort of, in my opinion, one of the pro points is that it's sort of unique. There aren't too many games like it, or any games like it in some senses. So yeah, that's all I'm gonna say about it right now. I think, I'm trying to think if there's any other major reasons why you shouldn't back it, but I think those are really the main ones. Like, you have like your Kickstarter spiel, which like sort of goes for any Kickstarter thing in general. Like, you shouldn't use Kickstarter as sort of pre-order page. It is a very complex, big time commitment that is going to be very difficult to learn, and even more so to teach to people who aren't into these type of games. This game is going to be a love it or you hate it type of game, just like Kingdom Death Monster was. And so it's not going to be for everyone. But that's okay. I don't think games really should be for everyone, in the sense that, I think games should be accessible to everyone. I don't think that games, should be designed to be for everyone, because otherwise you just get bad games. A game who's trying to do everything good will end up doing everything bad as well. So they have a clear vision. I like that. And what was my initial one? Oh yeah, it's very expensive. You are getting a lot of content, but it is also expensive. So those are essentially sums up my reasons why you shouldn't back Kingdoms Forlorn. However, especially if it goes to that first one, if you're not backing it now during its sort of lowered price, then maybe you might, buy into that FOMO, and you might end up wanting to back it later through the pledge manager, and it'll be at an increased price. So hopefully what I've talked about in the earlier part of this video sort of maybe swayed you to, back it, because there's a lot of cool things. And like I said, the campaign's not done yet. There's still a full week to go. So it's just going to get bigger and better. I will be definitely doing some more videos, of course, on the Tabletop Simulator demo. I do want to maybe do a series of videos for each knight story and focus on their story, just like I did with Sir Sanch. And then I've also gotten into contact with Into the Unknown Studios. I don't know if they're going to let me do it early, but right when true solo mode rules go into the Tabletop Simulator demo, which they are working on currently, I will be definitely making a video on true solo mode. And we'll go from there, and maybe even just do the rest of the night's videos in using the true solo mode, depending on how it goes. But that's gonna do for this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I know it was very random, very rambly. But other than what my list was, I didn't have a script for this because I just really wanted to get this up as soon as possible before I go to bed. Meaning also before I play a little bit more Elden Ring before bed. And I will have timestamps, of course, throughout the video, just so you can go to what you care, what you want to learn more about, I guess. But definitely let me know in the comments if it either helped you, if you have other questions that I can potentially answer and find out the answer for you, or maybe what your state of the pledge is. Are you an elite backer? Do you go all in? Are you gonna all in later like myself, or what are you up to? But anyways, let me know. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.